Hey guys, welcome back. Better Than a Let's Play episode 43. I'm Enigmius, and today, as you can see, we've got a turbine running on steam from our reactor. And we've got it kinda not too horribly tuned. All things considered, the turbine has specific speed ranges that we want to keep it at. And if you run it too high for too long, really bad things can happen. I'm not going to experiment to find out what those bad things are, but we've got it set up so it seems to be working. The biggest difficulty we have right now is it's using less than half of the steam being produced by the reactor. So we have to make another one, which is fine, except we don't have the materials. So this episode is just kind of taking a look at what it's mostly about the turbines, but we're going to talk a little bit about what we've done with our reactor to facilitate all of this. Now, I showed you how the reactor was originally set up. We had all of these Certus tanks, and you can see now you can tell we've got a little bit of an equilibrium without even looking at the controller for the reactor, because you can see there are some of these Certus tanks that are feeding the steam into our ME network, our computer storage network. They're not full. They kind of pulsate like this one is doing. A little bit comes in and then it gets sucked out, and it comes in and gets sucked out. It's not being filled so fast that it stays full. Pretty close, as you can see. Most of these are full. If we come around, we've got another row in the back, and there's one over there, two over here, that are in the same boat. They fill a little bit and then they empty, and that's pretty much exactly what we want, because that tells us that we're just kind of sitting right on the fringes of what we're able to input into our storage system. Now, I tell you what, I don't have to be told, even though some of you are already thinking it. It seems kind of silly to have a reactor here producing steam that's literally 1, 2, 3, 4 blocks away from a turbine consuming steam, and yet we're still funneling the steam into a storage network and then pulling it out of the storage network and into the turbine. The reason why I set it up this way is so that when we have other turbines set up, we don't have to worry about running pipes. We could set up a turbine in the nether and send the liquid through a tesseract, the steam from here through a tesseract into the nether, and run a turbine there, and it'll just pull from the storage and we don't have to worry about it. So that's the reason why we're buffering it into a storage system and then out into the turbine. It's actually a system that I really like doing because of that little buffer. Of course, we're buffering it so there's a little buffer. That's how it works. Now, the only other thing that I've really done to this reactor since converting it back into a steam generating reactor from one that produces power is I increased the amount of water being fed into the reactor. This was very important. This was one of the key bottlenecks we had previously, is we just weren't able to get enough water into the reactor to convert it to steam as fast as the reactor was capable of doing. We've got a zombie in his underpants who's kind of doing a little rubber banding off that tower. Watch, we're gonna It looks best when he does the rubber band and he's down here and you shoot up here and he dies down there. That's what I was trying to do, but never mind. So you can see this whole wall now is the reactor coolant ports. The whole thing used to be glass with a row down at the bottom of reactor coolant ports. Now it's all reactor coolant ports and a lot of fluid ducts transferring water from over here to here. I also redid our water production area here. This is now 60 aqueous accumulators in here, surrounded wherever possible by water source blocks. Overkill on the water source blocks. I've got water source blocks where the aqueous accumulators can't even make use of them, but I just wanted to get it set up so that I could have confidence that we were getting as much out of these guys as we possibly could. And we are. So far, we're doing a pretty good job. So if we come over here, we've also got this lever set on this thing because you can't stick it to the redstone port you see here. You can't put a lever on there to send a redstone signal to it, but if you put some sort of block or whatever and then put the lever, it'll get the signal there. This is set so that I don't have to get up on top of the reactor to adjust the control rod insertion settings. If it's off, the control rods are set at 80%, which really slows down the amount of fuel consumed and also the amount of waste heat that is produced. We can only produce so much steam, and after the temperature gets beyond a certain point, I think it's 2000 degrees, we're just wasting fuel. We're not producing any more steam, but we are, consuming fuel at a faster rate. And when I first fire up the reactor, if I have to make some changes to the reactor, I deactivate it for whatever reason, I can get a really quick boost of temperature up to our goal and then cut it off so that it settles in around 2000 as opposed to just a slow climb to 2000. So just this one lever allows us to have that measure of control without having to come up here and toggle each one of these individually to the setting that I want. So that's kind of helpful. And then lastly, you can see here, this is more evidence of that equilibrium. You can see, let's get rid of NEI so that we can see this better. The water doesn't fill up. It's just kind of sitting at a level. It's not full and it's not decreasing rapidly. It dips a little bit every once in a while and then it comes back up. So we're providing just enough water to the system now so that it's kind of sitting balanced for the amount of steam that it's producing, and the amount of steam that we're producing is almost as much as we can feed into our storage system with a little bit to spare. So we're in pretty good shape. We're a little bit over temperature. I'm okay with that. It's not that big of a deal. Biggest setback with this whole system is that we are converting yellorium into cyanite very, very slowly. We need a lot of cyanite to set up our second turbine, and this is just painful. You can see here, it's like 1 or 2 millibuckets per second is basically what it seems to be working out to. But that's okay because we've got other things that we can work on in the meantime. You can see here we've got 1 cyanite ingot, and over here we've got 2 cyanite ingots. So we've got 3 cyanite ingots, and we're not even going to look. We're not even going to try and figure it out right now. I've added an ME access terminal out here so I can access my entire storage system outside when I'm working out here, see what's going on. We're back up to another 115 yellorite ore, plus we've got 8 or 10 stacks of converted yellorite ingots sitting in that chest right there. We're good for fuel. And then this is our turbine. This is really what I wanted to focus on once we got all the details sorted for that. Very, very similar to the reactor in the way that it's built. You have a turbine controller, you have power ports to receive the power, you have fluid input and or output. You can toggle them depending on what you need. So we've got a fluid port here. They're all set to input on this guy, and we're receiving steam into these tanks from our ME network. You can see it's coming in here and it's pushing the steam into the tanks and then pulled out of the tanks by the fluid ducts and fed in here. So we've got 10 of these fluid ports feeding steam into the turbine. Now obviously there's some differences between the turbine and the reactor. Instead of fuel rods and the control rods up top, we have a rotor shaft, or a turbine rotor shaft, or whatever the hell it's specifically called, and a turbine rotor bearing. Every turbine has to have one of these, and it basically connects to the shaft, and then you attach the blades to it, and you can see this is what it looks like before it starts spinning, is you've basically got a spider somewhere around here. For some reason I've been getting a lot of spiders lately. You can see down the middle we've got the turbine rotor shaft that we just attached to the bearing and bring it all the way down. We'll have it basically touching the bottom of this turbine. And then you attach the rotor blades, one at a time, to the shaft. So it comes out in all 4 cardinal directions. You don't have to do a diagonal. You don't have to do like a whole panel of them. It's just to make a plus sign. And then fill it in with this stuff, whatever kind of metal you want. And I feel like I'm not actually doing this as a guide, and there's a lot going on with these, and it would really be a benefit if you want to mess around with this, if you haven't done so already, to take a look at the wiki. Find one wiki. There are some that do a pretty good job of describing what we're doing, but these are Enderium blocks. Very, very expensive, in other words, that are managing how energy is being converted and how much steam is being used and all these other things, and you can adjust the performance of the turbine by changing the type and quantity of these blocks, which have to be placed around the shaft somewhere. So wherever you have a block, you can't have a rotor, like the blades. And you can only have 8. So you can see that's why it's empty around the outside. So 8 all the way around, and then you just build it up if you want more. So that's what I've got on here, is I've got 8, 16, 21. And that's all the patience that I had for building them. The point being, you don't have to have a full course of 8 around the shaft, and it seems to be working all right. So we're going to duplicate this exact same thing over here, and then we're just going to fill it in with glass like we've got here and fire it up, and it should be very capable of using up more steam, making more use of the reactor that we've got, and producing more power. So the last thing that we really need to do in order for this to all make sense is take a look at what we're actually getting out of this, which right now is pretty good. So the speed goal that we have is either 900 or 1800 RPM. You can see where it's got the green line here. This area here is around the 900 area, and then we're up to this green area here, which is around 1800. So it says right there, rotors perform best at 900 or 1800 RPM. Rotors kept over speed for too long may fail catastrophically. So that's why spent a little time tuning it. So you can tune that by the number of rotors you have, the amount of steam coming into it, and the blocks of the solid metal that you put inside. And then you've got some options here for what you want to do with the material. The steam gets converted back into water. What do you want to do with the water? You can basically dump it all and not have this fill up. We already filled it up before we made that decision. You can have it so that it dumps any excess. This will be full, but if there's any excess, it'll be basically destroyed. Or you can just preserve it all, and the turbine will shut down if it fills up. Seems, I don't know, maybe if there's a different material that we could use for this, I don't know. All I really know for sure is I don't really care about the water, because we're getting our water from the aqueous accumulator, which is basically unlimited and doing just fine, producing what we need for now. And again, talking about an equilibrium, you can see we've got a certain amount of steam in the system, and it's not full nor is it empty, which means we're not using it faster than we're receiving it. Otherwise this would be empty, and we're not using it slower than we're receiving it. Otherwise this would be full. That's good. And the energy buffer is empty because we're actually using energy faster than we're producing it now, because we are running our MFR laser drill for mining, and it's using 20,000 RF per tick, and we're only producing 13,443. Now, that doesn't seem like a lot when we were producing over 20,000 with just the reactor in power mode, but remember, we're using less than half the steam we're producing. So if we get the second reactor set up exactly the same way, receiving exactly the same amount of steam, we're going to be producing close to 27,000 RF per tick, which is more than the reactor, and still not using all of the steam that we're producing. So it's definitely worth it to do this setup if you can afford it. Like I say, it's very, very material intensive. So that's basically what I've been working on, is waiting patiently for cyanite ingots to be produced so that I can make the components for the turbine, assemble the turbine, get it all into place and happy. And then I realized just what the levels were and said, okay, we need a second one, and probably at some point a third. We're building big things, and it's fun. I'm having a lot of fun with it. Next up, I think what we need to do, we might do a little tiny segment on an MFR laser drill setup in the nether, depending on whether or not I can produce the power necessary. We may just shut this down and then set the one up in the nether, and that way we're using the same amount of power, but we're doing it in a different environment, just to see what we get. And then we got to start working on magic stuff, which means I got to get my butt in gear and start finishing off those platforms up there. You can see we've got the second triangle in place. Actually, let's just take a really quick hop up there, because we haven't been up here for a while. I haven't had time to get another bite-sized builds episode out. But you can see I have been working on it. We've got our first triangle, and it's still... I haven't adjusted my field of view, but the triangle really, really messes up the way you see things with the field of view. It's pretty crazy. It's a perfect equilateral triangle, but it doesn't look like it unless you're looking at it from a particular viewpoint. Like, this looks good, right? You can spin around and it doesn't feel like it's wonky or out of balance, but you get it from an angle and it just looks all stretched out. So you can see we've got a second triangle here, and it's just for looks, but we're going to put some more circular platforms at the tips of the triangle where we'll have all kinds of magical things. And then we've got this whole section here already where we can start setting up our magic stuff and having a little fun with that, because As far as the tech stuff goes, I kind of feel like once you've got to the kind of power we're producing and MFR laser drills pillaging the landscape without pillaging the landscape, if you catch my meaning, they don't actually dig and make things look ugly, they just produce ore and it's fantastic. The tech game is... There's only so much more we could do with it, but there's a ton of stuff we can do with the magic. So that's what we're going to do. I've actually been converting our garden, getting rid of all the vegetables, because who wants vegetables when you could be growing magical plants and ender pearls? Really. So that's slowly being converted. This is going to be our portal area. We're going to move this stuff probably over there so that we've got portals on these platforms, and this will actually be useful, including a portal that will teleport someone from here up to there. Not that it's super important. So in other words, lots of stuff left to do, and if you want to be notified when I add that stuff in a video of some kind, you can always subscribe to my channel. That's one good way to do it. The other way is follow me on Google Plus and or Twitter. Information for that is in the information section below. Please do leave your comments and feedback. It's important, and it's more fun when people are engaged and they're saying, hey, what about this, or you may not have known this, or that was really stupid, ha ha ha, you idiot. Whatever. So do that and I'll read it. It'll be fantastic. As always, thanks for watching, guys, and take care.